Mary Marino, I live in State College. I think that when the bids went out, Ed, you're referring to the February 11th meeting, when there was permission to bid the routine summer projects?
It was that.
Does that sound about right?
It was not on that list.
That was not on that list.
It's not on that list, so that's why people are kind of dismayed. Okay. But what I really want to ask about, there's another part of this that I'd like a little more information about. I don't need to know people's names, but $150,000 is a lot of money. 3 years ago, today, whenever. And if that money was donated anonymously, I need to know, does the board know, who knows who gave that money?
In this particular case, Ed, Denny Youngkin, and I are aware of the names of the donors. We have other, you may not be aware, we have another fund, a $100,000 fund for our music department called the Crescendo Fund, and that also was given anonymously, and the board was not aware of the names of the donors who wish to have that information kept to themselves. I don't think it's unusual in any group that avails itself of philanthropic donations to provide an opportunity for an anonymous gift. What is not kept from the board is the gift itself, the conditions of the gift, the purpose of the gift, the amount of the gift, where it's being held, and so on. So that's, again, that's something that we have done with other gifts. We've not had very many gifts of this size. I mean, we hope and wish that we might have more in the future. But if the board would decide that you don't wish to permit anyone to provide any anonymity, then we would just, going forward, we would need to make people aware of that. You know, that's not what we've done in the past.
I'm just not comfortable with that. Like I said, I don't need to know personally, but I need to know that the people I elected who have the authority, or the responsibility, rather, to make the decision to spend that money, have that information. It's, you know, because we're operating in a public school system, not a private foundation or corporation. That concerns me. And there are people out there in the public who really sincerely believe that the $1 million AstroTurf that was built is a part of this, and that the two go hand in hand, and that should have been put into the district-wide master plan. You know, we need more openness.
Thank you, Kiki.
You're welcome.
David Paterno, State College Area School District. I spent several years, maybe 6, on the private fundraising CAG, so I applaud you in raising private funds for this project. What I'm not clear on, it's been a while since I worked with your policies and procedures there, but it's come to my understanding that the donor is not known by the board members. Is that correct? But you're aware of who the donor is personally, Patricia, is that correct?
That's right.
All right. Is that our current policy, that donors can keep their donations private from the board?
It's not a policy. It's been a practice.
So no, it's not a policy.
That's correct.
My question is it a policy?
It's not a policy.
All right.
It's a practice. It's what we've done in the past with others.
I am very glad to see private funding help facilities projects, help curricular development, etc. I would be thrilled to see some priority on the kindergartens, the elementaries, as I'm sure everybody would. On this practice versus procedure, it was very clear to me in my 6 years or 5.5 with the private fundraising CAC, we always wanted to make sure that action was gated by procedure and policy. And in fact, before we executed on Memorial Field, I personally helped a lot with the finance of the private fundraising CAG to revise policy and procedure before we made forward movements there and advertising on the scoreboard, as you recall. In this situation, I am very concerned that the board not having access or knowledge to who the donor is completely subverts their role of oversight in this system of administration, teachers, the whole system. To me, the school board is an oversight role to the superintendent and the entire administration. And if we don't have a policy and procedure that we're following that backs up the board not having knowledge of the donor, that in and of itself is concerning. Now, I'd love to see all the private fundraising money push these projects forward, but this is something we need to evaluate, I feel, before we move forward. We held off on Memorial Field till policy and procedure could be revised, to where it could be approved for change to procedure and policy, and then after it was approved and changed, we then moved forward. So the practice has to be scrutinized to the role of oversight and responsibility of the board, or else we've negated their purpose.
Thanks, Dave.
Was I supposed to word that as a question? I apologize. I lost my train of thought somewhere in there.
This isn't Jeopardy. So.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Is there anybody else?
I guess after hearing your comments, Chris, I feel like I probably should try to speak from the perspective of the Citizens Committee for Fundraising. Since that committee's inception over a decade ago, the committee worked very closely with the administration and with the board to establish a set of policies for private fundraising. And then once those policies were in place and approved, that committee has worked to raise funds consistent with those policies. It is my understanding that the funds for this purpose are consistent with those policies. Is that correct? I think if at this point the board decides that we don't wish to honor those policies, or maybe I'm not saying it quite right, don't wish to honor the giving that was consistent with the policies, I think we make it very hard for the Committee for Private Fundraising to raise additional funds, or to raise funds in the future. And we've got a policy. If people don't, and we've had other donations certainly given within that policy, or different aspects, various aspects of the policy. I think if we don't continue to honor that policy, if we say to these donors, sorry, even though that policy was in effect,
What
we're
policy are
changing
you talking about?
all the policies for private fundraising.
No, but what policy do you think we're violating if we don't follow through? The policy that you can give some money and then the district will match it?
Patricia, maybe you can explain this better than I, or maybe Karen can.
I think that, in general, there's no policy, as you just described that.
I wish to address the extensive controversy created over the donations given to support building a facility at the South Building track. Over 5 years ago, Richard Queenie died. A lifelong runner, Rick also encouraged young people to participate in the sport. As a PIAA official, Rick timed somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 indoor and outdoor and cross-country meets for State College. Incidentally, he always gave his pay for these events to the girls' and boys' track booster clubs, equally divided. After Rick's death, Massachusetts Friends had a tree planted near the track in his memory. Some of us wanted to do more. We determined that we'd like to support building of the concession stand and restroom facility that the athletic department had said was needed for the track. We never dreamed that this sincerely well-intentioned deed would create such negativity and controversy. We wanted to be anonymous only so that the focus would be on Rick, not on the donors. I've chosen to make this statement this evening because it is important for this board and the community to understand that these contributions were given anonymously simply to honor Rick Queenie, not for any nefarious purpose, as has been suggested. Unfortunately, it now seems that lack of respect for anonymity has tarnished what was intended to be a memorial to a good man, a facility that would have benefited our students and community. A failure by the board to approve the project by accepting the low bid on or before May 5th will make it very clear that this board, the majority of this board, is unwilling to honor the spirit and the conditions with which this funding was given and accepted.